Hey everyone. So today I'm going to share with you this inking process on a commissioned drawing. This is one of several commissions that I did for this individual. Hopefully they don't mind. I know I haven't gotten the official go-ahead to share this on social media, and so I haven't. The audience here is small enough, and the fact that this is in public, hopefully this is okay with them. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about and I may interject little bits and pieces here about what I'm drawing. But I wanted to talk today about what I feel is a bit of a trap in inking and something that held me back from finding my own style, and I think maybe holds a lot of artists back from finding their own style in art in general, not only inking. So that is the trap of feeling like you need to be over realistic, or this trend in a lot of art, which is to be very realistic in your depiction, like looking at something and it looks like a photograph. And you see it a lot more in painting, but I think that to a certain degree, it can be a bit of a trap in inking as well. And it hinders you from finding your own style if you're trying to make something exactly the way it would appear in life. Well, then you're not going to have your own personal stamp on it. It's just going to look like a very hyper realistic image of whatever it is. And you're missing, when you make something extremely realistic, you're missing the thing that gives art its special quality and your style, which gives it its special quality. And that is the filter of going through your mind, going through your hands, because over time, when you kind of establish your own style, you're creating a language, and that language is how I interpret this thing, how I depict metal, how I depict hair or wood or all of these elements combined in a certain way, how I draw scales, that type of thing. So just wanted to discuss that a little bit because, yeah, it can definitely hold you back and be super frustrating if you're trying to always be extremely realistic. So try to be a little more free with your inking and not so hung up on trying to make it look exactly the way that hair would look in real life, right? What you're trying to do, rather than depict what it would look like in real life, you're using certain things like form and perspective and shading. Yes, you're trying to depict something in a realistic way using those tools, but you're also saying this is how I am choosing to depict that thing. And that's why it's kind of really difficult to do a quote unquote instructional video on art. Like I can show you how I do something, and you could try to do it the exact same way, but that would not be fulfilling to you. It's fulfilling to me because this is over time how I've established my style. I think what's more meaningful for you and more impactful for you is for me to talk about how you go about getting your own style and encouraging you to follow this path. And maybe the path that I followed in order to get my style isn't what will work for you, but I can only speak to my own experience and encourage you in that way. So try to uh, photographic reference is very helpful for me to get things like proportion and perspective. At some point, I try to step away from using photographic reference and use my mind more and imagine it in my mind. That helps me to trust my hands in the way that I depict something. So I hope that makes sense. It's something that I know I've talked about in other videos, and you'll probably continue to hear me talk about it in the future. So it's something that I feel is really important in establishing your own style. It's sort of like the same thing applies to having artists that we admire. Like I'm a huge fan of master inkers like Franklin Booth and Bernie Wrightson, and going down right into the ink work of Frank Frazetta and more contemporary artists. And while I'm a huge fan of the way they work, and you can definitely see the influence of their styles in my own style, if I was just trying to duplicate what I see from them, then I feel that art wouldn't feel like it has a soul. And that's not to say that we can't benefit and learn a lot from studying and drawing a scene in the style of someone else. But I'm saying that to truly be fulfilled in your art and establish your own style at some point, just like you have to step away from using photography as as a tool, you also eventually have to step away from using the way that other artists rendered a certain thing as a tool. So at some point, you take the training wheels off and you start to really run run your idea through your own filter of your own mind and your own abilities. And just to go back to what you see here, what I'm drawing here, another thing that I wanted to point out, and you'll also a lot of these things I talk about, you hear me talk about over and over again in my videos, but it's because I think it's important. Now, when you look at this drawing, it's it's not so much about the way you depict each individual component, the scales, the hair, the metal, the gems, that type of thing, but it's more about the way that those materials interact. So I'm depicting the hair in one way and the scales in a different way, and a different type of scale in a different way. And then the metal, I'm using stippling to depict metal. And so when you look at it, your brain instantly grabs onto that, and you can tell that there's different textures here. And I've used a different type of mark making to depict this different type of material. So it's the interplay of those different textures, those different marks, and cueing the eye into the fact that this is a different material, this is a different substance. And I just feel like that interplay of a variety of markings is really important in inking. That is really the strength of ink is is varying up your mark making. And it's the power of black versus white. It's the power of the texture. And so use that to our advantage by really driving that difference home between the different materials that we're inking. So I hope that makes sense. But it's really it's really fun to share these concepts and get a little bit philosophical in doing voiceovers on these videos and talking to you directly about some of these things rather than trying to do a kind of a, tutorial type of instruction, which I am going to get into that a little more. But I feel like you can really benefit a lot more from this type of conversation. So you can see here how I'm treating these scales a little bit differently, um, introducing a little more white into the design of the inking. It gives it gives these scales a little bit more of a light tone while still holding true to the darker scales around them. So try playing with these different things, and there's fun ways of working with tone and introducing a darker tone or keeping a tone lighter by varying up the marks and just leaving white space in creative ways. I always say there's 1,000 ways that a person could ink what you see me inking here, and each of those 1,000 ways would probably be fantastic. There's so many different ways of doing something so simple as black ink artwork. Yeah, which is why I always tell myself I want to get into color, putting watercolor with my ink. That's kind of a goal of mine, is to do more of that. But the ink always draws me back in because I'm always still learning that even with just black ink, there's just a lifetime's worth of learning to be done. And it's really just experimentation. It's doing a lot of work for yourself and trying new things and being creative in your approach. And also even in commission work sometimes, like in this commission dragon that I'm working on here. I didn't know exactly how I was going to depict the scales when I started, and I was playing around with it. I did a little bit, kind of some shading with a pencil, and thought, I'm going to try this different type of thing here. And I think it turned out really cool. It really works. So a good chunk of a good chunk of inking, just like any other art, is practicing and playing around and and having the confidence to try something different. Confidence is big too. When you start inking, if you've never inked before, it's daunting because, of course, you can't erase it. And, perhaps in certain types of painting, you have a little bit more leeway, like oil paint, you can just keep on covering it up. And to a point, anyway. And in ink, it's a little bit trickier. There's not always as much room to correct mistakes or to revise your vision. But it's a fascinating medium. I love it, and it just keeps on pulling me back to just the plain old black and white stuff. And I love being able to share my thoughts on it with you. And I hope that you get a lot out of videos like this. Even though it's not a straight up tutorial, it's more of a thoughts on art style sort of narration. I hope that you enjoyed it. Leave some comments below. Just give me your thoughts on some of these topics, and also if there's anything that you'd like to hear me cover in my next video, let me know. But I appreciate you watching till the end, and I will see you in the next video.